Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome. Yes, backstage told me we are on air. We are live. So good to see everyone. Very happy to be here today discussing a topic that is a passion for us, which is how do we help African entrepreneurs create and develop African champions, companies that might be the next Centaurus unicorns on the making in the continent. And I'm very lucky today to have I think a great combination of skills and experience and nationalities across the continent on the panel. But I think it's much more interesting that they introduce themselves versus me saying how amazing and relevant their experience is. So Athman, Sam, Eliud, I will introduce you one by one, but if you can talk a little bit about who you are and why is this topic relevant to you in your current position or in your past experience. So maybe Athman, I'll let you introduce yourself first. Let's keep it 90-second speech, but looking forward to hear from you. So Athman.
Yeah, thank you, Cristobal. Actually, I'll keep it much shorter. So, name is Athman Ali. I'm Kenyan, but currently calling in from Kigali, Rwanda. I've had the privilege to serve in the technology space, technology for development for over 21 years now in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. I'm currently a senior advisor to the government of Rwanda, Ministry of ICT as the Senior Advisor Tech for Development. I've just joined that last week, actually. Before that, I was the MasterCard Foundation Program Lead for Digital Economy for both Kenya and Rwanda. My interest in this topic, well, my wife and I, when I say I, started a small impact investment vehicle called 1000 Alternatives in April 2018 when we were still based in Southeast Asia, and we've been making investments across Sub-Saharan Africa. And right now we're in a coordination partnership with Startup Wise Guys on the Africa SAS B2B fund. So thank you, Christopher. Back to you.
Thank you. Sam, calling us today from Ghana. So introduce yourself. I'll let you speak good about your current relevant investment experience mostly.
I'm mobile. Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the panel. And I'm Sam Amanor, native of Ghana, but grew up in the States, relocated to Ghana about 10 years ago, and basically was a big tech startup in the West Africa region. I was fortunate to have the trust and the belief of EMC Corporation, which is one of the largest tech companies that got acquired by Dell, and to run the business for them across West Africa and emerging markets. And after 5 years, we sort of decided to start a company, and the company's in the digital space, helping with infrastructure, and building the app store for what financial service providers need. So banks, insurance, pensions, finance ministries, and what they need to run their day-to-day operations in engaging customers and the risk ecosystem of compliance and regulators. So that's what we do now. We're a team of 40 here in Ghana with operations hopefully soon in Nigeria and Morocco. So in South Africa, that's what we do. On the side, we saw a need for talent, which was in huge shortage. And so we said, okay, how can we build an innovation hub and start building capacity along the line? And so we started the Ghana Innovation Hub, which basically was serving the digital entrepreneurs with skills training, product design, and how to basically scale their businesses and connect them to the corporates and build a bridge that will allow them to get more customers and make money and grow revenue. So that's what we do now. And I'm happy to be an ambassador to Startup Wise for Ghana. And we have a few startups who are joining the current upcoming acceleration program. So that's what I do. I love tennis, and I love golf, and I love swimming. I love anything outdoors, so I don't put my AC on at home. So that's me.
Good. We keep that in mind. Eliud, apart from the managing director of SYG African program, but maybe introduce yourself and also your relevant experience before joining Wise Guys.
Thank you, Cristobal. Yeah, my name is Eliud Mungai, the incoming of the SWG Africa MD for the program that will launch in February. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. My background mainly has been in the fintech space over the last 8 years. My last assignment being with Carbon and also Branch International. So mainly I've been a startup operator. I've been fortunate to see two big startups scale, being a very early employee. And I think my passion for entrepreneurship has been built on this because I've seen how what I call like the science of operating a startup and how to scale from very simple goals. And I have that firm belief that we are at the right time and at the right stage to scale across the board. So I think this opportunity for me with SWG Africa is to transfer that knowledge and to use my network to scale different startups across the board in different verticals and to help them propel across different markets.
Good, thank you. Allow myself to introduce myself in this case and why maybe I'm a bit more relevant than people think. I'm the CEO of Startup Wise Guys and general partner in all the funds. People said I'm the instigator of why we went to Africa and why I started this discussion 2 years ago within the company. But I think way more relevant is that I used to run a startup in Africa, mostly in Ghana, Uganda, and Nigeria, a social marketplace called Mobile Free 2014-15. So I spent a lot of time in Lagos, a bit of time in Accra, and also in Uganda. So I had the opportunity to see a startup within, trying to create a digital giant there. And now I'm actually very happy to be able to put some of that experience, plus the accumulated experience in the last 5 years, to help entrepreneurs in Africa, which we have a strong belief. But let's talk about belief, and let's ask you guys one by one. Why African startup? What's the potential and why now, right? So everybody talks about the potential of Africa for many years, but what's the African potential right now? What has changed maybe in the last 2 years with COVID, with the whole maybe new context? And maybe within that one, how do we create role models within the African startup founders for others to follow and create more and more talent, as you were commenting, Sam? So maybe Athman, I start with you, and then you guys jump in. I will be cutting off a little bit, but please, let's make it as interactive. I will be also reading from the visitors your comments. So guys, put any questions there. I try to introduce your questions or your angles in the discussion. So hopefully we make it very interactive. So Athman, why Africa now? What's the potential? What's the role models to be created in the continent?
No, thank you. I mean, it's a very pertinent question. I think we've heard these terms before, Africa rising, emerging market. And this is not by accident, right? It's because Africa is really those things. We are, for example, just to give you an interesting statistics, we are scheduled to have the largest number of youth in the labor market, a decade from now. And this youth will be creating and innovating. We have challenges which make Africans very innovative. Right? I give you an example of telephony. Because Africa didn't have infrastructure, legacy systems that were invested in landlines were able to leapfrog and take opportunities in the mobile communication space very quickly and very rapidly. And therefore, Africa is by design and by default using its challenges to innovate and rise very quickly. We are seeing this, from evidence of investments that are happening, primarily in the fintech space now, but there have been some in the e-commerce space where we've created unicorns already. We do have huge areas of our GDP, primary money generators still not touched. Agribusiness, agri-tech is an area. Tourism, which suffered under COVID, creates an opportunity in its own. And we do have a lot of opportunity around, business to business, business to consumer, business to government platforms that will enable us to create the next startups going forward. So how do we create role models then? I think we're also starting to see these examples of successful startups coming up. They are exciting to our youth, to our entrepreneurs, to our educated innovators. Here in Africa. And there's a network effect starting to unravel. But there is need to actually cement this progress by focusing a little bit more on the early growth stage startup ecosystem, which is where most of our innovation seems to be at this space. So I won't hold the space. I'll hand over to the rest of the panelists. Maybe they can add where I've not.
Yeah, I think that's a very good, Athman. I think the keyword there is leapfrog. I can take it up from there. I think the opportunity here is because Africa, we are at that stage where we can leapfrog the legacy technologies. I think the available talent is one key thing that has helped us propel and see the emergence of these well-funded startups across the board. But I think the other thing I can add is around the rapid digitalization across different business models. I think that is what is helping and creating this opportunity. While at the same time, across Africa, the whole market is opening up and they start interconnectedness. So you find myself in Kenya, I can easily trade with someone in Nigeria, our businesses can connect. So the available market for someone based in Kenya becomes opened up across Africa, in Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, and trade is easy. So that's why we've seen things like Fintech have taken the early stage in terms of growth because finance was the key thing, first opening up finance. And now we've seen our retail tech is really emerging strongly. But at the same time, health tech stuff, I think these are the key drivers propelling us on to that angle.
Sam, I see you're back.
Yes, 100%.
Yes,
I like that question. I like the question a lot because I think we have to look at evolution, right? I think everything is evolving around us, around the world. We humans are evolving. Our planet is evolving. Everybody's talking about climate change now because things are happening on a daily basis. Africa has been in the shadows in terms of not being online. If you look at connectivity to the internet, if you look at how we engage in businesses, a lot of those services were all done in an offline mode. You have to go somewhere to get a service, right? Whether it's school, you have to go somewhere. Whether it's a banking, you have to go somewhere. Whether it's insurance, whether it's agriculture. So there's a huge shift in terms of the evolution of how we engage and how we do business. And it's happening globally. More people are now on the internet in Africa than we were about 10 years ago. So the momentum is happening because it's a global trend. Life is moving online. And if life is moving online, businesses will have to find a way to interact and deal with the pace of how life is going. So that's one of the catalysts for the change. And the second thing is consumers are now used to instant services. So if you look at how we interact with social media, how we get things done online on the social front, everything seems instant. And if you're used to that kind of service delivery, and you now want to engage in a business transaction, and you're not getting that instant, you're basically going to lose customers. So that evolution on how things are happening and how we've been treated on social media is now translating into how business should be done. And I think those are the driving forces of how things. And thirdly, it's much cheaper to conduct business online than to do the brick and mortar, right? Because of speed, of execution. It's low cost. There's no infrastructure investment except what you buy for cloud and your developers, and obviously good customer care, customer success infrastructure that you have to put in place. So these catalysts, it's helping us. The fourth thing is the adoption of the mobile device, right? It's growing in Africa beyond imagination. Almost 8 out of every 10 people have some form of a mobile device. So this also improving the adoption of the digital businesses. And that's why you're seeing all these startups springing up everywhere.
Let me get out of the script already. Minute 11. I'm already out of the script. That's good. What do you see the infrastructure readiness for this massive digitalization and a massive in the African way, as you said it, mobile, much younger because the demographics in Africa are completely different. So the adoption of probably the mobile digitalization. So is the infrastructure ready? Is that massively different country by country. So do we find the Kenyan, the giants within the regions in much better infrastructure situation? Are the smaller countries, Ghana, Rwanda, ready? So those two answers. So that's answer with the angle about, is it very difficult country by country, or do we see champions on the infrastructure side? And I'm mostly talking about connectivity, right? Not the banking, for example, associated to the. So how do you see infrastructure readiness for this digitalization and this massive disruption coming into the continent? And are we leaving anybody behind because of demographics also on this jump?
Yeah. So I'll start off, Cristobal. I think those are excellent questions, really. And Africa is a big place. People tend to think of Africa as a country, but it's not, actually. It's different contexts, different countries. But I'll speak from one point of view, which is the government kind of investment in this kind of ecosystem plays, right? So, for example, 1 hour ago, I was in a meeting where we were discussing an ambitious agenda for Rwanda to digitize all citizen government services 100% by 2024, which is only 2 years away, right? There's government initiatives around setting up entire cities that would spur innovation. We've got Konza City in Kenya. We've got the Kigali Innovation City here. We've got a lot of money being poured into infrastructure and ecosystem support. Again, using Rwanda as an example, Asian Development Bank put in $100 million, matched with another $100 million from the World to actually work on the issue of getting devices out to Rwandans. 3.5 million Rwandans are set to benefit from this. And there's going to be a 75% push to have 75% of the population on digital IDs so that they can transact using these devices and connectivity. 4G network, mobile network rollouts. We are seeing across Eastern Africa, for example, in Ethiopia, the market opening up to have a second licensed telecom provider to provide competition there. We have countries where 4G has been rolled out almost entirely across the entire country. Rwanda, again, another example. We have a lot of back-end services needed to support funding and investments. Banks, financials in countries like Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, which are really well developed and starting to be bright spots for all this. So in short, I would say, the question about infrastructure is, a lot has been done, a lot needs to be done, but it's exciting, the kind of plans and the kind of resourcing that are being happening, including on the regulatory front, where we have startup acts, we have investment acts coming up in all the countries that I can think of at the moment.
Eliud, same one, but also adding your Kenyan experience. Talking about connectivity, some keeps getting in and out. This is the reality that we face, right? And we adapt to it, but this is the pure reality, right? So, Eliud, maybe put in your Kenyan and then Sam.
Exactly.
So first off, Africa is massive. So
sure.
We are a continent of 54 African countries. But you could see the concentration is just in about 6, 7, 8 countries where they start, the development has happened. So the truth of the matter, we are not, as a continent, we are not fully ready infrastructure-wise, but in the core markets, which represent also a big number, even in terms of just population, I think the addressable market is quite huge. So we could say still, we are ready as much as it's a small percentage of the continent. But I'd say there have been massive improvements, especially in terms of internet connectivity. As much as it deteriorates at sometimes, I think that we are having super speeds, and there's been huge improvement on that. I would say the major barrier, even what has prevented us like leapfrogging some of the technologies that are available, is actually on the regulatory front. So like from my own personal experience in Fintech, regulation has actually been the major barrier of innovation for us, because the technology is there, the people are willing, the money is there, all systems are set to go, but now regulations become a huge barrier to even the existing infrastructure that has already been built and is top class. So that would be my take.
Yeah, and I know you're coming to me. I'm already dealing with infrastructure and connectivity issues. And I live in the city, in the prime areas of Accra. One of the things that we're seeing is the fact that the requirements needed to size and build this collective ecosystem. If Adnan was talking about Rwanda and planning to have government services, if we African countries had the luxury to design an infrastructure the same way they design roads and housing, settlements and town planning, if we had that luxury, I think Africa would be ready. But right now, Africa is reacting, right, to the pace of global. Nobody knew, for example, the pandemic will happen, and so when it happened, cross-border connectivity, cross-border payments, cross-border interactions. Nobody knew about Zoom and Teams and now stream they will be sure is becoming reactive, right? Ghana, for example, we're about 60-70% penetrated when it comes to the internet. We have three cables coming in. We have national data centers. We have a tier 4 data center in Ghana. Talk about smart city initiatives. They're happening. Somebody can stop you, the police can stop you because the cameras are working, that you bypass a red light immediately. They can check if you want to pay for tickets. Today, those services are not readily real time, but you can, right? Because connectivity is improving. Mobile money is working because the networks are working, the telcos are working, but there's still a lot of work to be done on digital services and what connectivity we need, what infrastructure requirements we need, both cybersecurity and both internet connectivity, pervasive to the regional, to the rural areas. So if you talk about fintech, for example, in the major cities, fintech services are working. The moment you go out of that, you have to now go into your USSD services type, where you're not dabbing into some app, but you're using some keystrokes to be able to download and connect to a service, right? So I think there's a lot of planning and projection work, and then capital seems to be the hindrance as well. So I think Africa is ready. There's a lot of work to be done to proactively design what the future looks like so that we can reroute investments towards that.
Yeah, I will touch on capital, at least from a startup investment point of view, a bit later on the discussion. Interesting to talk about infrastructure coming from something 4 or 5 years ago. I remember you couldn't almost find any developers, but in South Africa, because there was the only place you get cloud infrastructure. So that was the only place actually you could have major coding centers. And that was already hindering a lot of the development. At least cloud is starting to be more present with more data centers across at least the major countries. But I agree with you, the city versus rural today is still a huge divide from the infrastructure point of view, right? But going to acceleration, and I think, of course, is where Startup Wise Guys operates, even if we invest further. How do we equip overall? How do you think we need to equip founders for the African reality? And maybe touching here about the whole online versus offline, right? So we leverage COVID to go fully online in many of our programs. We see this as a big opportunity because that's how you expand companies across continents, right? So I think it's the learning doing, but it has its challenges, right? So question for you guys, what are the most important aspects to equip founders on very early stage to start developing scalable startups in Africa? Because then we will go back about how do we use that in the program. But what are your point of views? Take it positively, or what are you observing most of these founders lack when they're starting to scale their companies, right? And maybe Sam, I'll let you go first this time, so you get the most original ideas, and then the rest of the guys can complement.
Yes, before. Yeah. I think the founders, they all have great ideas, business models. They have great teams who can come up with digital products. But then I think one of the constraints that startups founders don't look at is the details of compliance, right? Especially if it's a financial product or you're working within regulated ecosystems, there's a need to have a lot of work done on some of these regulatory efforts That's number one. So a lot of planning, a lot of consultation, a lot of investments had to go into how you scale, because typically if you're moving from Ghana to Nigeria, the regulatory construct changes just by crossing the border to Nigeria, right? The way you treat settlements is different. The fee structures are different. The licenses you need are different. So regulatory preparedness is proportional to your scaling, right? I think that's the first one. And there's a lot of cost, and there's a lot of delay, cost of time and cost of capital that goes into that scaling component. That's number one. The second bit is partnerships and collaboration. So I think a startup or a founder who wants to scale needs to know that what they want to do in that country has been done by somebody, and there's a need to collaborate. So you don't start from scratch in scaling your service or bringing that service to that new country and acquire new customers. So collaboration is key. So having an ecosystem that you work with other founders so that you can collaborate and stand up your services much faster, so you don't delay in repeating what has already been done. And the third bit has to do with having ample capital and forecasting, your cash flow forecasting, working capital, whether it's for settlement purposes or whether it's for working capital to build the teams or build your products. All of those things have to be done in advance, because if you're scaling and run out of cash, you're in trouble, right? So that is the third component that we need to put a lot of energy in before we scale or before we start. And lastly, a caution is startups don't have to scale prematurely, right? There has to be ready. The market has to be ready before you start, because else, if you've not gone deep in one market and you just want to have reach for the fancy of it, for the nice, decks and all that, you may just end up stretching yourself too thin and not be able to get the needed revenues that you promised your investors or stakeholders. So I think true readiness is needed in both revenue, compliance, and capital.
Eliud, what's your experience?
Yeah.
You're talking to founders every day, and you are making decisions to invest. What do you see the areas you can
I would say the first thing, by going online, I think the biggest opportunity here is the reach. So using the example of Startup West guys, just being based out of Kenya as MD, I'm able to reach out to entrepreneurs in 5 different countries. Like we launched our program in October. We've seen over 250 applications coming through, and most of them are very, very high quality startups in terms of the business ideas and just the basics of the tech. But where now we come in as an accelerator program and the value adds we're doing and where the need is, I think the key things for me from where I sit is mainly around, and from my experience, structure and accountability. So you find that, so one key thing we've observed in most startups, there are at least single or 2 founder kind of companies with a few employees. So they are very small companies at this very early stage. And most of the founders tend to be have a tech background in this SaaS business model. So what you're bringing in and what we are now trying to show them is, first, how do you build a world-class company in terms of setting up the right structures to ensure that you can scale this business in your current market, across markets, make it suitable for investors to come on board and to have confidence to invest in you. And the other key thing is now accountability. We have this drive as Africans, we've started businesses, we don't want to be employed, but to really be successful, from what I've observed, even from founders that I've worked with, international founders, is they have a system of accountability. So they're fortunate to have, like, being venture backed, having the board of advisors, their board of directors act as their accountability partners. So that's the kind of system that we want to introduce, such that these entrepreneurs, you remain accountable. And that's why we have that, like myself being the MD, the contact person for the program. You're able to guide them through. And now having that pool of mentors, our venture partners are able to add value in terms of where they're lacking, in terms of specific areas that we can introduce operational efficiency.
Athman, what's your view there?
So 2 points. One, I think, and this I've seen sitting, across startups that need investing and they're pitching, especially early stage startups. As Eliud said, the team is not fully formed most of the time, right? So you have two tech guys who have a great idea, they've been running with it, and they have an MVP, and on the basis of that MVP, they want investments, right? And we know it doesn't happen like that, right? Most investors, we start from analyzing the team. So any good accelerator program must have a focus on improving the quality of any startup it engages with from the point of view of execution, right? A good idea is only as good as it's executed. Having said that, many of the accelerator programs that have been run, at least in my experience, have been funded by concessionary funding. That's non-profit money, you know, a UNICEF or another big organization trying to make a difference. But the incentives do not go beyond helping the startup to actually grow and succeed, right? So most of these accelerator programs end up with an award of some sort. And that I have seen creates what I call winner junkies. So you have the two tech guys who had the brilliant ideas. They've won $10,000. They've gotten some feedback on how to make their company better. Instead of now using the $10,000 to actually implement growth in their company, they use the $10,000, you know, some in the pocket, some to improve the proposal, and then they apply for the next accelerator program where they can win 200,000, 100,000. And so the business becomes actually winning rather than actually growth. Right? And I think that's a narrative we need to change. If we look at the statistics, which we all know, right? You take any 100 startups that we want to invest in today, roughly 6% of them will succeed beyond the wildest imagination that we can have right now. About 25 to 30% will be here and there in 2 years' time. The rest will probably die off. Right? And so recognizing that this is the case, an accelerator program like the one we're running has to be very careful in its selection. Right? The quality of the deal flow has to be very good right from the beginning. And that by itself is a catch-22, right? So how do you work with early stage companies that are pretty good to begin with, yet, you know, you want to invest in them, but they're not as good as you would wish them to be, right? So there's a bit of investment in terms of thinking about advisory, mentorship, connection to innovation, peer-to-peer learning. Any good accelerator program must have this, right? And not only stop at that, and I think, and this is why I love the Wise Guys Accelerator program, because then it goes into funding, right? The what next question is answered. So once you've beefed up the company and it's good, it's not just an award for an award's sake, but there is a bit of active management, a bit of, you know, holding your hand to find additional funding, additional thinking, additional pivots. And that's what to me makes a good accelerator program.
Sam, what do you think? What are the scalability? You talked before even about scalability, about not scaling too fast or not scaling until you are ready, right? So what do you see from an early stage, the challenges to scale actually for those founders?
I mean, people want to scale because of growth, right? They want to scale because of traction. They want to scale because the product market fit has been validated. There's a clear problem they're solving. And again, I've seen startups that are saying, oh, we are in 8 countries. And then when you really uncover those countries, they're not really doing much. But it says on their pitch deck, we're in 8 countries. But they are making revenue from only 1 or 2. And the others is just an office with 1 consultant or 1 sales business development person. And then the rest of the business is centralized in that home base. For me, I think crawl, walk, and run, right? I think the crawling bit is trying to put the framework, a structure that allows you to succeed in your home base, right? Getting that structure in place, the compliance in place, getting the product market fit in place, making sure in your home country you have some significant market share, right? Because if in your home country you can't succeed, in a new territory, it's going to be very difficult. right? You can talk about scaling in country or scaling across borders. And most of them scaling in country requires at least 3 to 5 years, where the product has been validated, the business team, there's credibility of the brand and all of that. And then you begin to get real trust from the consumers and the stakeholders. So I think there's that crawling, walking, running has to be verified and justified in your home base, well, with evidence of revenue, evidence of that product is mature, that it can be tested, it's been broken, it's been fixed, and it's working, and not to be too desperate to open up another shop in another country. So I'll say scale first. The barriers are very clear. Scale first in country, then scale cross borders, and find partners. Make sure you're compliant in terms of how the product will be received.
If I may add, the flip side is on the investor side, right? There has to be a bit of patience, as some said, 3 to 5 years. But if an investor is coming in with a, what I would call a private equity mindset, exit as soon as possible, then the incentives are a bit more geared towards growth that creates shareholder value in a way that doesn't require the product or the company to grow as it should. Right? It's just a pump and dump scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates, different role models for different innovators as they're looking. If they see people are making money hand over fist without really having a product in the market, at the end of it, that's what they will do. So from our side, when we're thinking about acceleration and investment, we also have to be very careful not to create this kind of incentives as we go forward, and be patient.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think when we even, and you guys have been there, when we even talk to our own investors, we're very clear that you cannot expect returns before 5 to 7 years at least, right? But I think it's a catch-22 also. There is, with the higher valuations in the market, the literature about unicorns, everybody wants to run to become a unicorn. So I like the touch about the crawling, walking, and running. It takes time, right, to build a real unicorn, not a fake one that it will stumble the moment you take anything out, right? Because at the end of the day, if you just depend on the next round to keep running, then you have not built the fundamentals for the company. I think that's part of the challenges we have with our own founders. Hey, let's do it well, so then the growth in the long run will be much more sustainable than running too fast and then stumble across the head obstacle and running around. But talking about running fast, also addressing a bit of the question from the audience, what is the talent situation? So one of the most difficult things, and I think you talked about talent before, Sam, is access to talent, right? So what is the talent situation? And I know, again, when you said in Africa, I'm super happy if you tackle it from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda. So from your own reality there, but what is the situation and how, and maybe tackling this, how do we founders from Kenya, when they need to expand to Nigeria or to Uganda, they find a talented person in that country? So how do you do that, especially when you do that online and you don't have the networks? And how do we help potentially with our own networks to do that, right? Because I think this is one of the most difficult moments, like how you develop international networks across different countries when you're a first-time founder, 25, starting for the first time in Rwanda or in Ghana or in Kenya, right? So maybe Eliud, I'll let you go first this time, and then open up for Athman and Sam.
So the talent situation, the reality. So let me first take it on from an engineering perspective. The kind of engineers we have. So from what we've seen and the data we have, so like Kenya, Nigeria, in Africa have some of the best engineers that we have. While in other markets, they may not be quite advanced in terms of the tools and the knowledge that they are adopting. So you'd find, so I'll use a scenario like some experience we've had of late. So a Ugandan startup have a very good business model. They have really high MRR, but the tech platform they are on is quite poor. And they are having quite a big challenge accessing top talent within their country. So as SWG, we come in that because we have the contacts, we know people like in Nigeria. We've seen other startups that tech-wise are very good, but the business model is very poor. So as an accelerator program, we tend to match those two businesses because they now can build synergies where the startup in Nigeria, who are very good tech-wise, can now help the one in Uganda, and they create a much bigger and better company that is easily able to scale. Yes, we have very good talent in specific countries, but it's not across the board. But it's a fact that we have world-class talent, especially like engineers. The other good thing is, and the other advantage we have is that we've had a lot of Africans who've had great exposure across the world. And over the last 2-3 years, they're now coming back into Africa and bringing all their experience, all their networks from abroad, and creating that community within Africa. And this is being used by African startups to leverage in how they are operating. So we have talent in that aspect of people coming back to Africa, Africans who have been based or educated abroad, but now their key focus is on Africa. So that is a huge opportunity that most startups are leveraging on to scale and advance. So that would be my take. But maybe a last add is, at least with this, the social media, being online, things like LinkedIn, people are being able to connect very easily and identify talent, and it's very easy to network in the current information age, and it's easy to reach out to anybody that you want, and you can verify the experience. And the COVID, I think one post-COVID advantage is people have been open to connecting with others and helping each other, which we've seen in the last 1-2 years has really helped a lot of startups.
Athman, what do you think about talent situation, talent expansion, talent across countries?
I think the situation is improving, as Eliud said. I give you very specific examples. 3 years ago, when we were starting 1000 Alternatives and thinking of engaging with entrepreneurs, we looked at this issue. And we discovered that some of the largest Facebook developer groups are actually in Eastern Africa. And then it's not just a group where members have joined and then nothing is happening there. They have support from Facebook, about $700 a month to do events, and they teach each other stuff, and they end up even creating startups. Right? If you look at Eastern Africa again, Carnegie Mellon University has a campus in Rwanda. African Leadership University is, an entity that is developing world-class talent in terms of, not only engineering, but also soft skills needed to play in the international market. A lot of investment and thinking going into local universities around how to create this. So this is a question that's on everyone's mind. I think for me, what I've seen is that the talent tends to leave some of our African innovators and youth behind. Right? Think of a young lady was based in rural Kenya, whose entire family has been in farming. They have a secondary level education, and they want to, participate in the digital economy for Kenya. Where do they start? Right? What skills do they need, and how do they get the skills? And I think that's the bigger question. The question is not about, do we have cool, tech guys who are working in the Googles and the Facebooks headquartered in Eastern Africa and trying to create startups, but it's more about, how do we create sustainability in the way we approach the scaling program across Eastern Africa so that everyone is included. I think that's where I'll end. But I'll just say that there's a lot of thinking and effort as well from both government and private sector in terms of how to address this particular issue. Talent is there, just needs to be directed in the right way.
Sam, let me do one thing. We have 15 minutes, so I want to cover 2 more questions, but I'll let you tackle talent part on the next one if there was something that you think was meaningful. But I'll let you go first right now. And I want to tackle 2 things. One is the verticals, and the other one is the early stage funding situation overall in Africa, right? So you guys touched a little bit about some of the verticals, but let me go back to which verticals. Everybody talks about fintech. You mentioned a bit e-commerce. There was a bit of health tech, retail tech, a little bit of talk, sustainability. So, which one or two verticals you think are the hot ones to develop? Some of them might be already hot, some of them might develop. So, and if any of you touch fintech, the other one, unless you have something burning, don't tell me about fintech. Tell me your view in another vertical. So we maybe cover 3 or 4 verticals through the answers, and then we go to close. Probably we close with funding, which makes sense. Also talking about accelerator and investment to close that way. So some sectors, verticals. What do you think is the money or the opportunity right now in early stage?
Sure. Thank you. I think the attraction to fintech is that fintech is one of the many segments or verticals that cut across all the other verticals. So, for example, the use of capital, the use of liquidity, the use of payments, the interaction with money cuts across healthcare, it cuts across agriculture, it cuts across, you know, anything merchant, e-commerce. It cuts across almost everything you do. Now, the first wave that we've seen had to do with the whole peer-to-peer. So a lot of people were struggling to move money. You know, cash was offline mode, and now cash has to go online. So mobile money came up, blah, blah, blah. The wave two was now, okay, how do you build vertically contextual technology to help in the healthcare sector? And this sort of connects back to the talent issue. If you look at the verticals, most of the digital entrepreneurs are out there. They left their tech space. They know how to code. They know how to build platforms, but they necessarily don't have the vertical experience in building rich vertical solutions that will deal with transportation, or that would deal with healthcare or education or even legal, right? How many times do we hear about legal tech companies or even property tech companies or logistics tech companies? So there is a huge shortage of talent who come with deep experience within the different verticals that we're talking about. And there's a lot of work to be done in building up vertical focus digital companies, right? Because what's going to happen is peer-to-peer payments and transfers and all that is going to get saturated, and something had to happen. You have to now, even within the financial sector, there's still a need to deepen the applications and the technologies and the companies that are coming up. For example, trade finance, for example, lending, for example, cash management, for example, payroll. All these niche specific innovations have not been dealt with much. So there's a huge work that we have to do if we're going to move from offline to online. It starts with the universities, it starts with the innovation hubs, it starts with these accelerated programs to start bringing vertical focus growth into the mainstream. Because the tech guys, the startup entrepreneurs, once the business model and the business processes are clear, they can code anything, right? But the gap is this disconnect between the industry or the vertical and the tech that is needed to underpin that. So if we're going to see development and scaling and maturity, there has to be a lot of work that we have to do within those verticals. And that talent gap will be solved. The other challenge we're having in Africa is that there's talent flight. Right now, Facebook can hire people in East Africa. Facebook can hire people through, let's say, an Andela program, pick talent from Ghana, right, and work in the US or work in Asia, wherever. So there's a need for proper compensation of talent, else they will move from Ghana and work in California, or move from Kenya and work in California or in New York or wherever, because they're getting paid more. So we need to look at that aspect as well, because the talents are there. They may not just being compensated well. So there's a lot of flight. So when you're looking for them, they won't apply for the job that you're posting because they know you're not going to pay them well. So that's something we need to look at as well, in order to, because there's borderless work in the digital space now. So you need to find a way to concentrate talent pools within the domains that we want to build innovation in.
Athman?
Yeah, so in terms of verticals, for me, when we're talking about technology, I tend to think of it from two ways, right? One is technology as an enabler, and then there's technology as a sector itself. So we're looking at technology as a sector. It's more, the ICTs, the telecoms, the opportunities around what telecoms bring, the mobile money, the infrastructure that comes with that, building the equivalent of our own unicorns that are creating a network effect in a true digital economy. But if you look at the data and the statistics worldwide, right, even with the US and China, if you think about technology and economics from this point of view, you're taking a very narrow view, right? A digital economy in the US, for example, if you take this kind of approach, you're thinking about only telecoms and tech-based opportunities. It's maximum about 6.57% of the economy. But if you take a wider view of technology as an enabler, then you're upwards of 32%. And technology as an enabler means, let's look at the sectors that are very competitive for us right now. And what more operational efficiency can we squeeze out? How can we make our customer intimacy better? And how do we create opportunities for product leadership in that? So if you look across Sub-Saharan Africa right now, the biggest GDP earner for us is agriculture. So it makes sense to actually drive some of our talent in terms of startups to think about, B2B, B2C, B2G kind of opportunities and platforms that start from that sector. Maybe tourism and hospitality for some countries, the largest earner. And then try to balance the approach between, that and creating the next Facebook. What I've seen happening when our innovators think about verticals, they want to be the next big thing. And it's almost, they want to be the next Uber. They want to be the next. And they're bypassing opportunities that are right under their noses. Right? Monetizing, for example, using mobile money, the fertilizer subsidies in government using a mobile app. That's huge business. We know companies who have become unicorns partly because they offered a product like that, Cellulant in Nigeria. Yet they do it quietly. They showcase the other side of it, but they don't showcase actually what the opportunities are in terms of thinking really basic, thinking really about the African problems that we have, and not about bringing in a fancy platform that has worked in Europe and US and try to transplant it. So I would say in ending, the verticals issue for me, we approach it logically, based on the success we've already had in the sectors that are already good for us. Agriculture, tourism, and hospitality are big on my radar right now. Health is another one. And then try to build from there.
Eliud, what's your view? Just maybe complement, take both questions, right? So we basically, what's your view on the verticals? And I associate one about what's your view? How do you see early stage investment in Africa situation and momentum, right?
Yeah. So for the verticals, I think, and it goes back to the infrastructure question and what we discussed. So what has driven like fintech, it's the available infrastructure, but of course, unlike retail tech is hot right now. But also we are betting big like on ed tech, property tech. I think these are emerging, and across the board, we'll see a lot. Agri-tech, as Athman said, we will attract a lot of investment, and there's a lot of growth because the infrastructure continues to be available, and investors who also drive the conversation around this are becoming interested in some of these sectors. In terms of the fundraising, I think in terms of what the data available in the market, what gets a lot of publicity are the big mega deals, which is good. At least they also create a lot of network effect, especially in fintech, from what we've seen. But from recent, I've seen some recent data like we've done. There are a lot of startups, over 900 plus startups that have raised at small check sizes of 500K, of not more than 500K. So like even given like for us, what we're doing, we're just doing it's relative how you view it. It could be viewed as small, but it's also very significant, even a ticket size of 65,000 euros. But because of this focus, everybody wants to be a unicorn, wants to do like a mega fundraise. I think we have to change that narrative. not all startups can become unicorns, and there's massive opportunity even to do small fundraisers and still scale and be able to do something significant for the target market. So that's how I would view it.
Sam, what's your view on early stage investment right now in Africa situation, when you compare with what you have seen in the past years, but also what is around us in other continents, right? Because it's very different reality, right?
Well, I think it's a supply and demand, right? There has to be enough activity that warrants the need for early stage capital from different investors. What is lacking is that visibility. Number one, it's missing in our markets. That's one. You have a lot of startups when you look into, like, our last accelerator program we did, for example, we were funded by the World Bank, and in that program we needed to get startups who are making at least $50,000 a year. They've been in business for 2 years or 3 years, and it was quite disappointing to search for these startups who are digital natives, who are building things that are connecting customers digitally. It was very investor community is waiting to see, okay, who is showing some level of traction. The funds they are looking, the funds that are coming in are coming from accelerator programs. We don't have the VCs or Ps, coming in at that early stage outside of the program fundings, right? So it makes it very, very difficult to get patient capital. That was okay. I'll let these startups run for 2-3 years, let them build that maturity curve before they start scaling. There's a gap, and as a result, we're not getting the momentum that we need. It's a catch-22 scenario. We're not getting the donor funding. We're not getting the PE funds or early stage investors coming in. So things are not moving the way we want. But I think there's still a lot of value. Like Eliud said, there's a lot of value. Not everybody can be a unicorn. So we need the supply of capital side to look intently to these early stage companies and change the pressure they put on some of these startups, because the market is quite sometimes difficult for these early stage founders.
Okay.
I think we lost.
No.
Okay, are you there? Did you
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
everything
we're here. Infrastructure, we talk about it at the beginning of
Hello?
that one. We hear you. Do you hear us? Hopefully you do, because we're just closing. So, have a couple of minutes to go. We'd like to have about a minute just to summarize.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Athman, last words. So tell me one thing.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, good.
I've finished my submission, basically.
Good. Athman, tell me one thing that is exciting. One thing. If you had to take one thing that is exciting today in the African startup space, what is it? What is the one thing that you said, this really excites me? Talent, company, vertical, countries. One thing. I give you, the three of you, that to close, and then give me 60 seconds to do it.
For me, it's the opportunity, really. And the opportunity is quite different. We might have small markets in some countries, but we're able to position these small markets as proof of concept markets to go elsewhere. We might have large markets, which is on challenges, but a lot of the infrastructure challenges we have, the startup ecosystem challenges we have, are opportunities in themselves. So what's exciting me is actually the opportunity. And it's the right time for early stage investors to come to Sub-Saharan Africa, because it's ground zero here almost. So there are a lot of lessons that could be brought from all over the world to benefit us, but there's a lot of opportunity here to create meaningful startups that scale in both profit and impact, and that really excites me.
Sam, one word of excitement from you. What does it excite you right now?
I think when I measure the evolution of digital economy, we're still at early days, and so there's more room to build out than what we've already covered. So there's massive opportunity. I think the evolution requires some great resources to make it happen. So investors are definitely welcome. And for the founders, my advice is be patient and build for long term. So that's my 2 cents in those lines. So there's a lot to be done, and there's opportunities to be covered.
Eliud.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the access to angel investors is something that has really been exciting me over the last 1 year. That willingness of even Africans to invest in other Africans. We're seeing a lot of interest making equity investments into African startups. And there's been a huge improvement in terms of like the platforms available. We've seen even the way African companies are getting incorporated. I think they are being investor ready is really key to the growth of all African startups across the board, and that willingness and available capital to invest and that interest, I think that is really exciting me. And people are opening up even to small check sizes because they're making a fundamental difference.
Very good. Okay, guys, thank you. You always have these meetings in the past in big conferences. It only happen a couple of times a year. So I think, I still love to bring you guys and have a dark and a stormy together somewhere in Africa. But I think I'm also grateful that online is bringing us together and bringing new opportunities. I think you all said it's the opportunity that is exciting, but it's also the opportunity that comes with patience, with the long-term views that, we are in, I don't want to say ground zero, but almost ground zero, but on a massive digitalization time in which there is more and more money coming in. And I like the sentence from the beginning. There's a lot of challenges, but these are opportunities to innovate and to leapfrog and to not only copy others, but do things very different from others, because the demographics, the what we face is very different. And maybe adding from one of the comments from you, Athman, about it's not just about the fanciness of some verticals, but some fundamental verticals. Agriculture was mentioned. There is ways to expand this to be massive, right, and to leverage the opportunity that we have in the content. So, but nothing more exciting than working with founders at the end of the day to tackle these opportunities, these challenges, and all of us will be working with them. So we're still looking at teams. We're looking at teams to invest right now. We're looking at teams to invest in the next program in 6 months right now, and I start to pre-accelerate with them. So just a call out, any of you reach out, direct message from LinkedIn to Eliud, to myself, through Sam, to Athman. Go to our website, apply there. There is one thing we do is we look at every single application because we are long-term focused. So even if you're not ready today, you will be applying again in the future, and we want to help founders, right? So I'm sure we're going to be in a panel like this in 2 to 3 years, talking already about amazing role models we have already invested in growth and the new ones to come. But let's not go jump ahead. Let's start with the first program and let Eliud and the team work the magic. So thank you, guys. As I said, hope before the summer to visit and have a drink on site. Can never be beaten by anything online. But let's leverage the online opportunity in Africa going forward. So thank you. Talk to you very soon. Thank you for the audience for your questions. And let's keep engaging. This is about building networks to do this together across the region. That's the best way to grow. So we need each other to do it. Awesome. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
And pleasure to meet you, Adnan and Eliud.